What's up, y'all? This is the 425 here to talk some college football this week. Jeremy, what caught your eye last Saturday, man? It was a pretty crazy late weekend of college football here in November.
Yeah, I mean, we should have known better, I guess, because last week
Yeah,
when we
dude. No, I'm sorry.
talked,
You put that on your notes, yeah. And at the end of the day, it was like, man, like there's a lot of crazy shit that happened today. And then it was like, well, yeah, it is, week 12 in college football. But we really didn't feel
yeah,
that way heading into the weekend, like
no,
even with
we
Michigan
spoke
and Ohio
last week,
State.
and last week we were like, it's kind of a bland weekend of college football. Nothing too exciting
Yeah.
is gonna happen, and then we should have known better that it
Like what
was
else is
just,
gonna happen besides
yeah.
crazy?
So it was pretty fun. I think the story of the day is just it was a day of survival, really. Like, I mean, and one, two, three, four, and five all had scares. I mean, Georgia dominated against Kentucky, but the score didn't indicate that. Like, if you just box scored, you'd be like, "Oh wow, Kentucky hung with Georgia," but
Ball
Georgia
game
was
there, yeah.
really Georgia was really in control of the game the entire time. They just didn't put up a lot of points.
Hmm.
Their defense is still dominant. They survived that scare, and now they got Georgia Tech next week. Ohio State struggled for some of the day against Maryland. I guess you can't say they struggled completely, but they it was a 3 point game twice in
It's
the
a
fourth
three-point game
quarter.
late.
Yeah,
That score got buoyed by the strip sack late there a little bit. Obviously,
yeah,
I think they were favored by like 28.5 points, so it's not like they were going to cover or anything like that. Wasn't a bad beat, but still, it was a touchdown added late that didn't really reflect how the game went, I thought.
obviously Michigan. We'll talk about later. They
Mm-hmm.
had survived their scare. TCU had a game-winning field goal at the end. And the team that went down was number five Tennessee.
Yeah.
Spencer Rattler had not one, not two, not three, not four, not five, but six touchdown passes, and looked like the douchebag that we always knew he was
Dog,
while
they ran
doing
out of
that.
they they ran out of fireworks, man, in South Carolina for they scored so many points. They hung up 63 on them boys. In
Yeah,
their major weakness that everyone really pointed out, like, hey, this offense could be the best in the country, but this defense isn't elite. This defense isn't going to win them a natty.
yeah, I mean we said it for weeks. Tennessee was not going to be confused for a defensive juggernaut.
Hmm.
And the effects of the veer and shoot offense kind of played itself out as the season wore on. I've always wondered what the veer and shoot would look like in the SEC, and for the first few weeks, it looked pretty scary. But the thing that's interesting about the veer and shoot to me, that's always really interested me when Texas started running it after Baylor did in the last remaining years of Charlie Strong, was that if you are playing a good defense and they're sound defensively, you can the veer and shoot allows the defense to dictate where the ball is going. So they can dictate whether the quarterback's going to keep it and throw the ball, or they can dictate if they want the running back to hold the ball and run for and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. You'll still score some points, you'll still move the ball some, but it's a flawed system when it comes down to the nitty gritty and wanting to win a national championship. There's going to be years where it's just too explosive to stop. We've seen that with RG3. Probably
Yeah,
the most effective year that it's ever been has been the RG3 Heisman year. Uh, but
certainly.
but for the most part, I mean, good defensive coordinators, really good defensive coordinators, can dictate who is going to get the ball and kind of slow down the veer and shoot. And we definitely saw it against Georgia, and now we saw it for two out of the last 3 weeks with South Carolina just really owning them. And it's really unfortunate for Hendon Hooker as he
Yeah, that was
tore his
really tough to see him
ACL
go down. I
and
I
a
saw a tweet,
non-contact injury.
this one on grass, the rare on grass non-contact. Um, yeah, I saw a tweet over the weekend that was like, after everything Tennessee's done this year and their season amounts to like, hey, what if we took a Big 12 offense and put it in the SEC? And the result is that was fun.
Yeah,
That's it. Y'all beat Bama. I'm glad. I'm happy for you. It was the first time in a long time, but that's it.
yeah.
So have fun in the Peach Bowl or the Citrus Bowl, and I do feel bad for Hendon Hooker, who could potentially still win the Heisman. We'll talk about that a little later on once we get out towards the Pac-12. But yeah, absolutely just gut wrenching for him to go down like that.
Yeah, and it probably won't affect his draft status. I'm sure that he'll be recovered enough to do interviews. I don't think he'll be able to do anything at the combine for sure.
Yeah, we're not going to see any
Um,
workouts from him, unfortunately.
but I mean, veer and shoot quarterbacks have not really done well in the NFL anyways, minus the 2 years of RG3 in at the beginning of his Washington tenure.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be interesting. But really, I mean, credit to Shane Beamer. A lot of people were clowning on him, especially in his press conferences after games, where they questioned the culture that he was building there. And
Yeah.
I don't know if this I don't know if this is a um, a culture changing win for that program because it seems like Tennessee kind of fizzled out at the end of the year. But you can't take away from that feeling in South Carolina that they're having, and now they have a big rivalry game with out of conference foe Clemson this weekend, where they try to. Um, if they can put up 63 points, they'll beat Clemson too. So,
Oh
because
yeah.
we've
My
both
God.
mentioned that Clemson won't, we don't have confidence that they can score above 30 every game.
No. Yeah. Absolutely not. And you, is it a big like program changing win for South Carolina? It could be. It's definitely something to build on. You got
Yeah,
to imagine, Spencer Rattler is not going to be there next year, but you have that taste in your mouth, and it was probably a recruiting weekend for them. I mean, you have a big top 5 opponent in town. It's a night game in
most
SEC country,
definitely.
so yeah, dude, it's definitely something that they can build off of. And Beamer's got a pretty good track record so far. Obviously, has the lineage, which doesn't always mean anything, but he's off to a decent start there, and they're going to end up having a pretty decent year down in South Carolina. So
It was, I gotta be honest though, it was nice to hear the Beamer ball chant again, because I've missed that from the Vatek days when Frank Beamer really had that thing humming. Just Beamer ball, which for those that are uninitiated as a college game day sicko, Beamer ball is hang your hat on defense and special teams and everything, and we'll take care of the rest.
yes, sir. Bud Foster, Virginia Tech, the whole gang down there. Yeah, we were in our fantasy football group chat on Saturday. We were lamenting the downfall of Virginia Tech and how it was. One of our buddies said it was formerly a destination venue for him, and I'm like, dude, still like Blacksburg on
Yeah, I
game day is
still want
still
to
a place to
go.
go,
Yeah,
man.
I still got to go there. Yeah, for sure.
They have been completely irrelevant. Obviously, Justin Fuente couldn't figure it out there, and now Brent Pryce down there. So hopefully they can get some things going. But what else? Anything else in the Big 12? I know you wanted to talk about Max Duggan a little bit.
I mean, Max Duggan, he really put their, I mean, he's carried them for most of the year. But Quentin Johnson was out, their running back went down, um, and he really had to muster up. They were down 10 points, or yeah, they were down, I think they were down 9 points with 6.5 minutes to go in the game. And so it was gut check time, and he had to do it without his best receiver, a potential number one, round one receiver, in Quentin Johnson, and other injuries that they had, and they battled it out. I mean, it's always tough to go on the road 2 weeks in a row, but what made it, I know that they were up for the Texas game, and maybe they were taking Baylor a little lightly, even though that's technically their bigger rival. But everyone knows that the teams in the Big 12 that are from the state of Texas, they all consider Texas as the stepping stone that they need to walk over. So yeah, I mean, for him to do that, he probably was in some Heisman conversations already, but we'll get into Heisman talk later. But I think he definitely deserves to be in that top four now, with the way he put the team on his back late and carried them to that win.
Yeah, there were 2 or 3 times late there where you're like, okay, this game's over, and TCU's
Yeah,
going down, man. And in that first window, it was like, okay, Michigan and TCU's going down. Like, we're about to lose half the playoff teams right here. And
yeah,
it went both ways. When TCU pulled that out, that game was maybe 10, 15 minutes real time ahead of Michigan, Illinois.
yeah,
And when that happened, like, it gave me a little bit more hope watching the Michigan Illinois game. Like, all right, it's not, Bloody Saturday or anything like that. Like, it's
yeah.
if they won, we can pull this one out too. And then obviously Michigan went on to win also. The
Yeah,
Big
I was
Ten.
thinking about that late. I was thinking about that late Saturday night. I didn't put it in the notes for the pod, but we were about 11 points away combined from the three teams, three of the top four going down,
Yeah.
which is pretty crazy to think about.
Off if you, I mean, you throw in the 10 points from Georgia and Kentucky, and you're looking at 3 or 4 scores and all top 4 teams losing. So
Yeah.
yeah, keeping it in the Big Ten for a second. Purdue keeps their hopes alive. You text me on Saturday. Minnesota dropped the bag, though. They fumbled the bag because they had their destiny in their hands, and they went out and lost to Iowa. So
Man, yeah, I kept tuning back into that game and putting it on my second TV. And Minnesota had so many chances to just all they needed was a field goal. Just drive down the field to get to the 25-yard line at best case scenario. I don't know how good their kicker is, but I mean 35 yards minimum for most college kickers, and you
right,
can win the ball game and control your destiny to get to where you want to get to and been where PJ Fleck's never been. He's never been in a Big Ten. He's never won the Big Ten West, and it's something that he's been there for a few years now. Like that's everything that uh, that he's been trying to build that program to. This is the best their program's been since maybe last year was probably their more talented team. But I mean, it just seems like they're destined to be an 8-win team for the remainder of Fleck's tenure there.
yeah, you would hope that eventually they'd get over the hump, and this would have been a year to do it, man. Like, with Iowa being, at the end of the day, Iowa's going to end up being what they always are, but with some of the struggles they had early on, and I know they didn't play them early on, but it's some momentum that was definitely there to be seized. And Wisconsin not being themselves at all.
Yeah.
In Northwestern, not even barely even putting up a fight this year. Illinois popped up. Brett Bielema did his thing. Hey, this is my time. They come up and do something, and
Yeah.
they ended up not. They're not going to win the West, but it's hard to argue that they're not the best team in the West.
Yeah. And so Purdue
Definitely from what
needs
we've seen.
Yeah, so Purdue needs to win this weekend, and then they got to hope that Nebraska can get Mickey Joseph one more win and beat Iowa on the road, which isn't likely.
No.
Just knowing Iowa's defense, it'll probably be like a 13-3 game or 13-6, and Iowa will go back to the Big Ten championship just like last year, but probably worse than last year's bunch that made it there.
Yeah, last year's bunch that got beat by 39. 42-3 could hardly get beat any worse, but definitely I would take last year's team over this year's team just based on performance. We got the head coaching vacancies in the West. It seems like Leonard's going to get that job in Wisconsin, and as far as Nebraska goes, I don't really know. I haven't heard too much anything concrete come out of Nebraska.
Yeah, I mean that's the one benefit of regular season ending is that this is when head coaching jobs they tip it. This is where it starts to build steam and where people start to make their hires is right before bowl games. You see coaches leave their program, go heading into the bowl game to take a new job. And so I imagine within the next week we'll hear some more rumblings. I know there was a crazy rumor started by a Mississippi State beat writer that Lane Kiffin was taking the Auburn job on Friday. That he has since clowned on that beat reporter since then and just totally denied. And it would kind of be the most Lane Kiffin thing ever if he ended up taking the Auburn job after publicly denying it. So
Yeah.
so you can't totally discount it yet, but if he's publicly denying it, I would think that he's probably not taking that job.
Yeah. I Cadillac Williams is doing some good stuff in Auburn, although that doesn't really seem like a lot of the times where you get that guy in the spot where it's like, hey, let's give him a shot. He's a hometown boy, and kind of like the Mickey Joseph thing, like let's just maybe it's his turn, maybe it's his time, and what else are we gonna get? Doesn't seem like Auburn's gonna go with that because they're just it's SEC, man. They're gonna try and make the biggest splash hire they can and make as
Yeah,
much of an
I
impact as they can.
as much as I know that he's a beloved former player. I mean, hell, I loved watching him run the ball when he was there. But it's really hard to believe Auburn boosters are going to be satisfied with beloved Cadillac Williams as their head coach, just knowing that he doesn't have very much coaching experience in general. Now I don't know if that's fair or not because I think he's a hell of a ball player, and for them to win the last few games that they have, I don't think that's in college football. That's not an off thing. Like you don't just win games because
Yeah,
for the luck of the game. Like it just
no,
doesn't happen that way.
no, you got to earn everything there. Keep going further west. Last but not least, we had some Pac-12 after dark action. We had Gus and Joel on the call for the Battle of LA, USC and UCLA. UCLA had a sellout of 70,000 people, even though their stadium seats like 96,000 and the record's like 105,000, but whatever. It was a great game, man. It was really fun watching Caleb Williams and Dorian Thompson Robinson, two guys that are probably going to play at the next level, one for sure and Caleb Williams, who's now arguably the Heisman frontrunner. What are your takeaways from the battle for Los Angeles?
Oh man, it lived up to the hype. I mean, normally in those types of games you'll usually see something where one team will blow out the other. Um, in this case, I thought UCLA's home field advantage and USC's lack of defensive anything thus far this season was going to carry UCLA to a win, but USC's defense kind of showed me some things under Alex Grinch. Now, I don't know if it was just like a one game thing or if they can keep it rolling, but they look like a team worthy of being a playoff team. With the caveat that they host Notre Dame this weekend, and then they host most likely Oregon in the Pac-12 championship game, depending on what happens this weekend with them. Oregon
Yeah,
has a tough road game on the road in the Civil War with Oregon State, so we'll
coming
have to
off of
see
a
what
tough game
happens there.
versus Utah.
Yeah,
That's really, I mean, Oregon plays a physical style of football, but that's a very tough stretch there. And USC definitely has the toughest road to the playoff. Obviously, they're on the outside looking in right now.
yeah.
And Notre Dame is going to be a physical football game. That's going to be a big tough for their defense because Notre Dame has an identity, and it's physicality and running the football. So we'll
And
see. I
that's
think,
that's yeah, that's not something that SC's defense. I'm not sure they can handle it. But the caveat is they are at home, so that is something they'll have a home field advantage there. But Coach Joseph has them playing good football for Notre Dame right now. He's really turned them around. Not Joseph. I don't know
Freeman,
why I said Joseph. Yeah.
I do.
Um,
But yeah. So it looks like, I mean, with Alex Grinch, like I think we know what we're getting.
Yeah.
at this point in time. I think you know what you're getting, and it's going to be the defenses that you saw in the Big 12. Now, you have a big enough footprint in the Big 12. I know enough ball where we're not sitting around and like, oh, Big 12 doesn't play defense. Like, it's just a different style and it's a different league and it's its own animal. So to sit here and say, I guess it's a double-edged sword. Like, he's going to bring you a Big 12 defense. Well, it's not exactly a compliment, but it's also not a dig either. I guess if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
it's not what you're thinking when we go there, but it's just like, well, it's just not going to have this certain style and that type of player. Frankly, I mean, he's probably going to end up with some 5 stars at USC, and maybe that'll change. But I think
Yeah,
that's what it
that
is.
was the point that I was going to make, was that, I mean, this is year one of his tenure, and you got to think with the recruiting hotbed that California is, that he'll do a better job of vamping up that defense than he was able to do at Oklahoma. But at the same time, you have to remember the head coach that he's coaching under. When you're when you're playing opposite of a dominant head coach who likes to run a hurry up spread air raid system, uh, it's really hard to play defense under that coach, because you're going to constantly be on the field because they're scoring points too fast. That's
Yeah,
something that me as an offensive minded coach, is something that I don't really have to worry about too much, and something that you as a defensive minded coach probably gives you nightmares about a little bit.
yeah, certainly, and that's one of the biggest reasons why you and I, to an extent, going back, a decade plus now, would be opposed to the spread and the hurry up, especially coming from the high school level that we did. Like, it was just never going to happen because you don't have 2 platoons, and
Yeah.
the amount of time it leaves your defense on the field. And even, we have no reason to talk Miami Hurricanes, but like Mike Ryan says all the time, like, it's a big deal. Like, Rhett Lashley's 3-and-outs are a lot different than Josh Gaddis's 3-and-outs, because Rhett Lashley's lasted 15 seconds and your defense is
Yeah.
back on the field, whereas Josh Gaddis will at least take a couple minutes off the clock and give your defense a blow, even if it is a 3-and-out.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, to finish off in the Pac-12, Williams was amazing. He was impressive. He elevated them to a win, and he's definitely belongs in the conversation. And the ceremony we're tomorrow, send him to New York, and we'll see. It's going to be a weird year, man. It's going to be diluted. We've said a couple times that maybe Corum versus Stroud in the shoe is going to decide the Heisman race, and we may not even see Blake Corum on Saturday. So,
Yeah.
um, and Hendon Hooker tore his ACL. Drake May had a little campaign going, and then they just lost to Georgia Tech last week, so that probably got squashed there.
And he
Um,
looked pedestrian as hell in that
it's
game too.
it's still very much up in the air with and heading into the last week of the regular season.
Yeah,
So I
I
mean,
don't
we
think
have
I've
2 more
ever
weeks.
changed. This has got to be one of the it's a very rare year, where I'm constantly changing who's the top of my leaderboard in the Heisman front. Usually there's a couple name stays that stay within the top two, that I may flip every once in a while, but I've got my third different Heisman leader going into this week. I've got Caleb Williams at 1,
Mhm.
CJ Stroud at 2, and Blake Corum at 3, just because of his injury. If he didn't have that injury, I'd probably have him at 2. But just because, no, just knowing like the narrative that he potentially could not play on Saturday kind of bumped him down a peg for me.
Yeah, he had 100 yards in the one half and had outplayed. But in the time that they were on the field, he outplayed Chase Brown.
Yeah.
So yeah, another big weekend coming up. Cody, do you want to pull up the next week's schedule, and we'll just run through these games here real quick to wrap up?
Yeah, while he's pulling that up, I mean, I know we've kind of clowned on him a little bit, but I got to get one last dig in, because I was just heaping so much praise on them to begin the year. But the ACC is an absolute garbage can. It's just what is going on in ACC country that they just can't, like. How are your best teams losing to these mediocre programs that just aren't having good seasons. And I don't mean that as a slight to college football programs, because you and I know how hard it is to build a program and to run a program. And where that's at the high school level, I can't even imagine the pressures of a college football environment. But at the same time, like, why is North Carolina losing to Georgia Tech? Why could they only muster up 17 points with 14 of them coming in the first quarter? Why is Clemson just constantly looking pedestrian at best on offense? It's just, I can't believe we got to this point where the ACC looks so strong, and now we've got NC State losing like two of the last three, and and one of those being 2-7 Boston College, who absolutely got murked on Saturday. Um,
Yeah, man,
so
it's really weird. It's been a really strange year for them, and I'm telling you right now, we're still 2 weeks away. But like North Carolina's gonna stress Clemson, if not just
oh,
straight up
for
beat them with that
sure, for
offense. Like
sure.
it ain't gonna look good. So regardless of how this plays out, Clemson's still in line to possibly backdoor into the playoff. I excuse me, I really don't want to see them give up like 45 points to North Carolina, but like squeak one out and then a TCU or a USC loses again along the way, and let's say Michigan beats Ohio State or something like that, and it's just I don't want to see that at all. Nobody does. So,
Yeah.
all right, Cody, let's scroll down through here. Thursday night we got the Egg Bowl, Mississippi State, Ole Miss. That's a decent slate there. Tulane and Cincinnati. It's a real low key good game on Friday
Yes.
at noon. NC State, North Carolina, meh. UCLA, Cal, nothing. Florida State. Watch Florida pop up and win one there.
Yeah.
Georgia Tech, Georgia would be like the upset of the century. I don't know. That would be, dude. I can't imagine being anyone that cares about football and like not being able to watch Michigan, Ohio State. Like who's watching Georgia Tech, Georgia? Like I know their fans obviously are, but just like I can't really put myself in those shoes. I feel
No, I
bad for
mean, this
the
is, I saw some random Big 12 account on Twitter the last couple of days, which I wanted to kind of chirp back at them, but I've kind of not been in the mood to do that lately. Where he was like, there's only two Michigan games a year that I'm watching, and it's Michigan versus Ohio State and Michigan versus Michigan State, which that guy's entitled to his opinion, but at the same time, like Michigan's been more relevant than most of the Big 12 for the entirety of my lifetime. So I'm not sure what that dude's talking about. But at the same time, like we all know college football is a regional sport. You usually pay attention to the teams in your region, and you don't really care about what's going on around the rest of the country. I think that'll change some with the expanded playoff. I think it's already changed in the last 5 to 10 years with just how much college football is televised around the country. Like, I know when I was living in Michigan, when I first moved up there in 2009, I was amazed how many like down south games that I was able to watch, and that was almost 10 years ago now. Or it is 10 years ago. It's close to 15 years ago from now.
yeah, there was a it was a Fox football Twitter account tweeting about the game and like Gus and Joel on the call, and Joel responded like, "Yeah, super excited, can't wait." And then I think it was like Dan Orlovsky was like, "I'll be thinking of you. I'm calling Georgia Tech, Georgia." It's just like, yeah, man, like that. Those are the people, like people who like would really care a lot, and they're gonna sit down and watch this thing start to finish like as soon as they can. But you're
Yeah,
calling Georgia Tech. You're gonna watch Georgia beat Georgia Tech 63-0. So, all right,
yeah.
we'll keep it moving. The game, you can get our thoughts on that over on the Homer Pod. Got the Iron Bowl at 3:30. Should not be too many fireworks there. The
Well,
Civil
we've
War
said
at
that, but then
3:30 is
there's
must
been times where
watch.
Auburn's upset Bama, so you never know in the Iron Bowl. But I would not expect, with the way this season's going, I wouldn't expect Bama to lose that game, especially at home.
No. Whether we see any of these games is totally dependent on how the Michigan game goes. 3:30, we got the Civil War, Iowa State and TCU. Traditionally, Iowa State's a bugger, and but with that game being at TCU, I don't really see them popping up and doing much there. Michigan State, Penn State, that's a stinker. LSU, A&M. A&M going for 8 losses, baby. 4-8. That's what I'm talking about. So that's the best record money can buy, apparently, and across the country. We'll get Joe Milton versus Vanderbilt. That should be fun. 7:30. We have Notre Dame, USC. That one obviously will be appointment viewing. Kansas State. Man, this has got to be their first ranked matchup in how long?
Yeah, it's the Sunflower Showdown, and it's the first one that's ever been this relevant, probably since the late 90s.
Gotta be ever, bro. Gotta be ever.
I mean, this game legit has Big 12 implications. Like, if Kansas State somehow loses to Kansas, which, I mean, if Jalen Daniels comes back and plays like the Jalen Daniels of the first month of the season, maybe they pull an upset. And if Texas takes care of business on Friday, then Texas somehow sneaks back doors into the Big 12 championship game, which I didn't think was possible, but it's a scenario that we're in right now with them having 4 losses.
Yeah, so K-State wins and they're in.
Yep.
Otherwise, Texas needs a win and they will get in.
Yep.
And then to finish off the day, we got the Apple Cup at 10:30, Washington and Washington State. So yeah, big rivalry weekend coming up. Obviously, the game is where the focus will be. So, you got anything else? We're running out of time here.
I mean, only thing I can say is EA Sports, get your effing shit together, please.
I don't even want to talk about it, dude.
So, no, other than that, I think we covered everything. It's always fun when a weekend that you're not too excited about for college football turns into a memorable one. And I remember this weekend for better or for worse, for probably all off season. I'll certainly be reminded of it during scouting season.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, all right, guys, we're gonna head over to the Homer Pod. You can meet us over there for some thoughts on the Michigan-Ohio State game. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Patreon. If there's a social media site, you can find the 425 on it. You can find myself on Twitter. I am at Coach Torres _. Jeremy is at Coach Miller 06. If you're watching this video, please hit subscribe, like, share it, send it to a friend, send it to a buddy. Just do whatever you can to drive some traffic our way. We appreciate you being here, and we'll see you over on the Homer Pod. Peace out, guys.
But that's how I am.